You ever stop and think about what an ad is really selling you? It's not just a product, right? It's an idea about who you are, or maybe who you could be. It's a seriously powerful force, shaping not just what we want, but who we think we are. So, let's take a closer look.
All right, check this out. It's an ad for a Lexus. And yeah, we've got a shirtless guy in what looks like a subway station, and his body is almost see-through with the car right behind him. It's a pretty striking image, but what is it actually trying to tell us?
So, is this really just about selling a car, or is it selling something bigger? A specific vision of success, of identity, of what it means to be a man? To figure that out, we've got to learn to speak the hidden language of these images. To crack the code on an ad like that Lexus one, we first have to understand how the image of the man got built in advertising in the first place. Believe me, none of this is by accident. It's a visual language that's been carefully constructed over a long, long time.
And really, this is the whole game right here. This quote kind of sums it up. Ads are constantly giving us these partial answers to the question, what does it mean to be a man? They're like this giant cultural mirror showing us this very specific, often super idealized version of masculinity that we're supposed to want and, buy.
And here's the really important part. Advertising doesn't just show things. It creates a kind of visual rulebook. It sets up these boundaries, these limits, on what's seen as normal for men and for women. These unspoken rules are what define what a man is supposed to look like, act like, and even what he's supposed to want.
Okay, so let's dig into how this rulebook actually got written. To really get what's happening in today's ads, we have to jump in our time machine and go way back. We're going to uncover the advertiser's original toolkit, the historical images that laid the foundation for literally everything we see now.
So it turns out we can trace the visual DNA of the modern man in ads back to three main ancestors. First, you've got your classic fine art portraits. Then there's this wild 19th century photo craze called the carte de visite. And finally, the surprisingly tricky world of the male pinup.
All right, first up, fine art. For centuries, right? Getting your portrait painted was something only the rich and powerful could do. They used all these specific poses and symbols to scream, "I have status." Well, advertisers saw that and just borrowed the whole playbook. They used that same visual language to connect a simple product to this grand idea of the good life, basically selling us a little slice of that affluence. Next, we've got something you've probably never heard of, the carte de visite. Seriously, think of these as the world's first Instagram posts. They were these small, cheap, mass-produced photo portraits that just went absolutely viral back in the 1800s. And when I say viral, I am not kidding. At their peak, these little cards made up a staggering 95% of all photographs being produced. This wasn't some little niche thing. It was a total cultural phenomenon.
Now, because of how the cameras worked back then, people had to hold these really stiff, standardized poses. And what that did, without anyone really planning it, was create this socially accepted ideal body, a normal way to present yourself. And then that image was circulated to millions. You can see how this was the perfect setup for advertising's love of using typical or ideal people, right? And finally, let's talk about the male pinup. This actually created a really interesting visual puzzle. See, in our culture, the act of being looked at often suggests you're passive, an object. But the dominant idea of masculinity is all about being active, being a doer. So how do you show a man as an object of desire without making him seem, well, less manly? The solution was pretty clever. You either show him doing something, an athlete in action, a businessman on the phone, or you just have him look away from the camera. That way he keeps his sense of power and agency.
Okay, so now we've got our historical toolkit, right? We have the status of fine art, the standardizing effect of the carte de visite, and that clever visual trick from the male pinup. With all that in our back pocket, we can finally come back to today and see what modern ads are really trying to sell us.
Let's start with this one. It's an ad for a coffee liqueur called Coloma. You see a couple, looks like they're on a date, but the real story isn't between them. Do you see where it's happening? Take a close look at that mirror.
This quote from the analysis just hits the nail on the head. The guy isn't even looking at his date. He's completely captivated by his own reflection, which has magically become this more handsome, more confident version of himself. It's like a modern-day Narcissus story playing out in a bar.
And this ad is just so brilliant at showing a few different things. First, you've got the mirror, a classic symbol of vanity that's almost always been aimed at women. But here, it's all about him. Second, he's basically using her impressed face as a looking glass to see his own value. And third, you could totally read a queer subtext into this. The most intimate, intense gaze is actually between the man and his own idealized male reflection.
Okay, let's circle back to our original mystery, the Lexus ad. Now that we have our decoder ring, we can see exactly what's going on here.
Man, this ad is just a masterclass in visual language. First, it's a textbook male pinup, but it cleverly solves that whole passivity problem by giving him the props of a Wall Street guy. The briefcase and the newspaper give him cover for being shirtless. Second, his body literally becomes a screen for the product. He's transparent, absorbing the message of consumption. And finally, this is not your traditional rational man who's in control of his world. No, he's what the analysis calls a synthetic man, a new kind of consumer who is defined by his emotional surrender to the fantasy that the car represents.
All right, one last example. Take a look at this ad for an Oldsmobile Aurora. We're looking at a billboard that shows this romantic couple, but look where the woman is looking. She's looking right past her partner, and her eyes are fixed on the car below. Yeah, this quote really gets to the heart of it. The ad is completely defying our expectations. Her desire, her attraction, it's not for the man next to her. It's for the product.
So what's happening here? The car has literally taken the man's place in this romantic fantasy. The product, the commodity, has become so powerful, so alluring, that it can actually compete with, and in this case, win against a real human being. It puts the man into a whole new kind of competition he might not even know he's in.
Now, it's easy to look at these and just think, clever ads. But when you start to see the pattern, you realize they're pointing to a pretty big shift in our culture. So why does any of this really matter when you're not flipping through a magazine?
It matters because ads are not just passive mirrors reflecting our culture. They are active engines that create culture. They don't just show us who we are. They help draw the very boundaries, the limits of who we're allowed to imagine ourselves to be. They're constantly redrawing the map of our identities.
So the next time you see an ad, on a billboard, on your phone, wherever, ask yourself this: what version of identity is it trying to sell me? What mirror of masculinity is it holding up? And what is it telling me I should see when I look into it?